It was a bit of a nightmare last time out against Brentford, losing 2-1. And myself and Baz, we're here for you to chat it through with Dave from the Irish Lions, and then start to think about that Man United Cup game. And we begin to dream, because things can only get better. Ings can only get, Mings can only get, things can only get better. Talk of the Trinity. I'll stop now. Roll the credits. Until you break down.
Hello and welcome to the first edition of 2022 of Talk of the Trinity. I'm Baz Barrett, with me is Will Forrest, and because it's January, transfer window is now in full swing and the squad needs refreshing. We're looking to get players in, maybe a few out. And if you've already listened to our transfer window special that was released between Christmas and New Year, when you had to find something else to do when the Leeds game was called off, then you'll already be familiar with our guest star today, Dave from the Irish Lions, because he, along with our band of other merry men, were discussing our thoughts on the upcoming transfer window and what we think may or may not be happening with the Villa squad. And if you haven't listened to that podcast or YouTube video yet, luckily for you, we are shameless self-publicists. So during the course of January, in the main podcast, we'll be getting a different guest on from the Transfer Window podcast special every week, just to plug it a bit more and see if we can get some more views. And as the month goes on, you'll be able to see how right or how wrong we were in terms of the things we discussed, which we will be wrapping up at the end of the month in the imaginatively titled Transfer Window Special Part 2. But before we get there, check us out on Twitter at Talk Trinity. Give us a like or comment on one of our many exciting polls or stories. Same on YouTube. We're gearing up the subscription levels bit by bit in our quest for domination. Also at Talk Trinity on the YouTube channel. And we'll go through all the other exciting podcast channels you can find us on at the end of the show. But first item of business for 2022. Unfortunately, New Year, same old story in terms of Villa in a game whereby probably the better team not getting the business done away at a newly promoted side. It was Brentford on Sunday at I think it's called the Brentford Community Stadium. It'll always be Griffin Park to me, even though it's not actually Griffin Park anymore. But Brentford 2, Villa 1, the late show from Brentford to take the points. You could have the most esteemed punditry for hours on how the game went, but is it simple enough to say, Dave, that all control from Villa, but not much substance, not much in the way of creativity, and then you just get hit if you don't take advantage while you're on top?
How's it going, lads? Great to be back on the show. I'll just reflect before I answer your question, Baz. If anyone's listening, go and bookmark the old transfer window discussion, because we were having amazing fun messaging each other when a player we mentioned in that show suddenly appears as a link. And it might be the most obscure link. I was like, yes, I was right. He's been linked. We haven't signed him, but he's been linked. Oh, so we get through a lot of names, so it's definitely worth a watch. To go back to your question, Baz. Oh my God! After the cancellation, Leeds, we're all looking forward to this one. Still on a bit of a kind of a Christmas high, just at the New Year in. Fully thought we were going to go out and under Gerrard, get the 3 points. 20 minutes in. Brilliant and great form, dominating, great goal from Danny Ings. I know we'll talk about him a bit later. The last thing I thought that would happen is in an hour and 20 minutes or so that we're going to be on the receiving end of a defeat. I did not see that coming. But as you say, I mean, you can dominate as much in a game, but if you don't, go and get those, chances and put the pressure on, and make actual inroads into the other team's defense, you may not win the game. And I just think when we got our goal, we seemed to just sit back a little. Maybe the timing of conceding the equaliser rattled us a bit because it was just before half time and they're going in at 1-1 instead of 1-0. The second half was just so lackluster, and we only showed a bit of intensity at the very end when we were chasing it. Now, if we played with a purpose like that throughout the second half, I've no doubt that we would have got another goal. So I can't believe we lost it. I just can't believe we lost it. But, Villa in January, that's just it. We're useless. Did no one tell Steven Gerrard that we have a dip in January every year? He's got that to contend with, the Villa January blues. That's what we call them. So yeah, you don't take advantage of your possession, and it could go horribly wrong, and it did.
I mean, the disappointing thing from my perspective was that Villa were a brighter team up until we scored. Brentford were playing, a defensive shape, as we expected. 5 at the back, fairly compact, 5-3-2. Villa scored. Sometimes you have a situation whereby a team, once they go a goal behind, they throw caution to the wind or get a bit more attacking, and sometimes you can get a bit overloaded and momentum can build. But Brentford didn't really do that for me. They carried on playing 5-3-2, and we just played into their hands a bit in terms of mentioned possession, just keeping possession without much in the way of end products. I mean, the stats tell me we had 5 shots on target. I couldn't tell you any, apart from the goal, from recollection. And that one shot on target, what a shot it was, that we will come on to. But on this slightly downbeat assessment so far of the game, Will, any positivity in terms of the overall performance, or are you, unfortunately, that was a very disappointing 90 minutes all round?
I think when you look at it overall, you look at that first 30 minutes and we were brilliant. We were unplayable. Brentford couldn't handle us. The goal in itself was a wonderfully crafted move. I watched it back again today. Buendia'a gets the ball out on the left wing, comes back towards his own halfway line, plays a 1-2 with Louise, and just as you think he's going to lose it, throws out this amazing Maradona turn, slips it through to Wings, and it's what we paid 30 million for, isn't it? That Ings finish, and you saw how much it meant to him. It was a fantastic goal, and I was sliding on my knees down the stairs. I tell you, I was that happy. And we were great, but we saw it was one of those, like against Newcastle at home earlier this season. We scored a goal, we think we've won, we go a little bit more complacent. Our passing towards the 35th minute started to get a little bit sloppy, and we gift Brentford possession, and then they'd attack. Unfortunately, we had the defence, or most of the defence, to rely on to win possession back for us until Wissa scored his quality goal. JJ could have done better. Target could have moved. That would definitely have helped in preventing the goal. But I think the 2 big things to take out of the game, or even maybe the 3 for me, are the performances of 3 players. I thought JJ Ramsey was brilliant when he was on the pitch. I was quite surprised they took him off. I know he was on a booking, but why not push him further forward so there's less chance of getting booked? Danny Ings was pressing all the way through. Yes, he was blowing out of his bum halfway through the match, but he was doing that much pressing and putting the pressure on the defenders. You're not surprised. He was doing the work for him and Traore a lot of the time. But Buendia'a was a magician. He was like another small Argentinian footballer You know, he was absolutely quality. He's probably his best performance for us, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice FIFA 22 skill move, that spin and that pass through. So that was good to see. And I think in terms of, especially in the second half, I think the shape of Brentford did push us back. I mean, our early games under Gerrard have been characterised by our fullbacks pushing forward, taking a higher line to try and join the attacking play. Didn't really get forward, really, especially, you know, in terms of, you expect Target to be a bit more defensive, which he was, but Cash wasn't able to break forward particularly. And Traore, well, he had a go, not fit particularly. He tried, but I think in terms of him individually, was it a great performance? Probably not, but you could tell as soon as, and he was, you know, trying, largely failing to create anything in particular, sometimes getting in Danny Ings' way. But I think as soon as he went off, our attacking threat down the right-hand side completely disappeared in terms of Cash not getting forward, no one able to make those, you know, kind of, not that we use hugging touchline wingers under Gerrard, but I think it allowed Brentford to become a bit more comfortable on that side of the field, and you know, we struggled to get out, especially at the end. But you mentioned Danny Ings. We know what Will's view is going to be about Danny Ings, so I'll pass this one to Dave first, you know, for a slightly more neutral view. Great goal, obviously, but apart from the finish, I mean, there was a surprise, as in we didn't know that Ollie Watkins was not going to be available. Official reason hasn't been disclosed, but sounds COVID related from what we could tell. But, you know, that's a slight speculation on our part. So is it simplistic to say that Ings' performance was at a slightly higher level than what we've expected recently because Watkins wasn't playing? Or was it just Ings getting back into more match fitness, so his performance is inevitably going to improve as he gets used to the system?
Well, this almost goes into a broader question, which we can discuss, is how can Ings and Watkins work together? Could you maybe play Watkins out wide? I think Ings works best when he is, you know, the target man. He's there in the box. You get the ball into him. It's almost like feed the hare. Before Ings scored, he was actually through, and I think it was it Buendia'a who put him through again? Brentford got back to get a very good block in. And then when McGinn fed him at the end there, just got caught under his feet. But he still got the shot away. So when he's there as the main man and he gets service, I think he can be very good. He can be very, very effective. So he scored. If he had grabbed that equaliser at the end, he would have been a hero, you know. So I think there's great potential there, and I do think it's the best we've seen from him in a Villa shirt. As we just said, you know, was he so good because Watkins wasn't there? Possibly, but then I think there's a bigger question of how can you fit Watkins and Ings together, because you got two quality players. It's hopefully about trying to find the right balance there. And probably no better man than Gerrard to figure it out. But he was very good. Before you pass it over to Will, it was his best performance in the Villa jersey, and he showed what he can do there. Get the ball to him, he runs through, he can be lethal. So we hopefully will see more of that over the course of the season.
Yeah, I mean, we'll limit your praise to 15 seconds, Will, in terms of Danny Ings. But once the praise is out of the way, did you agree that was Ings' best performance for Villa since he's joined, and hopefully showing the way forward, excuse the pun, in terms of how he can fit into the team? Or is it going to be a situation whereby when Watkins doesn't play, Ings is the main man? When Watkins does play, assuming that they're going to be in the same team, there's going to need to be some adjustment by Ings or Watkins, or both.
I think it's unfair to say that it was his best performance. I think it's his best performance since the start of the season. You know, he hasn't been great when we've played more recently, But then again, if he's had tonsillitis and he hasn't been fit, maybe that's played a factor in it. Though he did look very good up front. I think he showed from being 80% fit that when he's at 90, 100% fit, he could be a real asset for us. I think Dave hits the nail on the head. The quandary that Gerrard finds himself in is that Watkins and Ings need to play together. They need to be in the same team because we've got two quality forwards. And we mentioned on probably the first episode of this season's podcast, Ings and Watkins as two strikers, and just looked at as strikers, which is what they really are. There aren't many teams who have got two better strikers than us in the Premier League. I still stand by that at the moment. I feel that if Gerrard's going to stick with his Christmas tree formation with the two players behind the one, then Danny Ings has to be a focal point. Danny Ings has said that he's quicker than Watkins over a short distance. I don't know whether I believe him, but it is him, so I will do.
And that's something we want to see. They should get that on the Villa YouTube channel. The 40-yard dash down at Bodymoor Heath.
Well, 10 yards he might win. 40 yards, Watkins has got him on toast, hasn't he? And Ollie Watkins offers so much to us. He's great at holding up the ball. He's great at battling against defenders. He can create out of nothing, as he showed with his goal against Brighton. But I do feel he needs to be a little bit less selfish. There's times where he opts to shoot when there are other players who are in better positions. We talked previously about Man United away. Douglas Luiz, fantastic through ball to Watkins. He cut inside Varane, and all he had to do was roll it across the box. And I think Luiz was running back onto it. He went for a shot. He didn't need to. It's just, he's a typical striker who wants to score, and you obviously want your strikers to score. But if somebody's in a better position, lay the ball off to them. But I think it will work. And I think our front three, our best front three, will be those two. And Emi Buendia'a.
Well, if was it Meatloaf who said 2 out of 3 ain't bad? So we had Watkins and we had Ings and Buendia'a, on good form yesterday. Get Watkins in that trio, then we can say goodbye to Meatloaf. 3 out of 3 playing well, and you think in terms of the attacking quality for Villa, especially over the next month with the aforementioned Traore and Trezeguet absent due to the African Cup of Nations taking place. Although the
sniper.
Yeah, I suspect with I wasn't going to talk about Trezeguet, but I suspect that even if he wasn't going away with Egypt, that we probably wouldn't be seeing him much for Villa in the next few weeks, based on theatrics, I suppose would be the kindest way to describe it. And I think in terms of I think even the most one-eyed fan in the world probably couldn't defend that, but we're going to give it a good go. Does anybody want to defend that in terms of that, what I will call a dive in the penalty area? Did he get booked? If he didn't, I don't know how he didn't get booked for that, frankly.
Somehow, no. Brentford can be a bit windy. It's an open stadium. I think he just got frazzled by a gust of wind there and knocked him back. That's very much everyone is entitled to a defence logic.
Well, innocent till proven guilty, I guess.
When it happened, I remember seeing it in real time, and the angle we were at, it looked like he had got caught. And I stood up and I was like, that's a penalty, that's a penalty. And when they showed it back, I very quickly retreated into the corner of my living room and hid behind my hands. It was bloody awful. Why didn't he put the ball hard and low across the 6-yard box and hope that it hit somebody and went in?
This is a brilliant point. Okay, maybe he's thinking he might lose control of it, or I don't know. He just doesn't have the confidence to go for goal. Why go down? And there's been a lot of stick up against him on social media, but I think that's okay. We're not Man United. We don't like that kind of nonsense. We're Aston Villa, and it's okay to call that out because it shouldn't happen. It's ridiculous. It's embarrassing.
Does he not realise that we only have penalties given against us and not for us?
Well, he will certainly realise against Man United in the next couple of games. That we'll come on to. But that would very tenuously linked in terms of the indefensible to the defence. And obviously Tyrone Mings not playing on Sunday due to suspension. Me and Will had a discussion in the Brentford preview about who might play at centre-back. Courtney Hawes stepped up due to what looks like, at time of recording, the imminent, if not already departed, Axel Tuanzebe going back to Old Trafford and then on to Napoli. Ezri Konsa, because Watkins was unavailable, was the only B to play against his former team. Moving to you, Dave, is it simplistic or too simplistic to say Tyrone Mings wasn't playing, we lost due to what may be some, and we'll go into it in a bit more detail, some defensive disorganisation, you could call it perhaps. Too simplistic to say that's why we need Tyrone Mings in the team and you don't know what you got until he's gone? Or is that a bit too, kind of overlooking some other issues that we had in that back four on Sunday?
Well, I suppose the issue is who came in for Tyrone Mings, and it was Courtney Hawes, and it wasn't a good game for Courtney. That's all we can say. Tyrone Mings gets a lot of stick because he makes the odd mistake every couple of games, but I mean, he's a leader, and he's, you look at him and he has a presence, and he's always roaring at people, and he really is marshalling the defence. And now a lot of people absolutely love Ezri Konsa. A lot of the Villa social media presidents, they get annoyed about a lot of things. They don't seem to get annoyed about Konsa. I personally think Konsa is a very good and skillful player, but benefits from having Tyrone Mings, who's the kind of the commanding centre back beside him. And so I do think when Tyrone isn't there, you notice his absence. We're having a bit of a debate before this. It wasn't on air actually, but you'll have to take my word, listeners, that we were talking about this, and I think Will suggested, would you make Konsa captain? And my point was, I'm not so sure, because anytime Mings isn't there, I haven't been terribly impressed. And I think it was the Crystal Palace game last year was on my mind. We were missing Mings and just conceded a couple of sloppy goals. And again, Mings is missing. And there seemed to be a bit of disorganisation. Let's face it, Brentford only had 3 chances and they scored 2. And they got a very good save out of Martinez for the other one. So, but I suppose writing Konsa off, that would be unfair as well. We had a very poor performance from Courtney Hawes. I'd be very happy, though, that Tyrone Mings is back for the Man United game. He is a leader and we need him.
So we had a debate, me and Will, in the Brentford preview about Mings and his medium long-term future at Villa and how that we tied into Villa's ambitions, for Europe, Champions League, mid-table. Will, you've been very vocal in terms of your support for Tyrone Mings, similar to Dave. Case closed for you after Sunday in terms of Mings being a mainstay of that defence for the foreseeable future?
Definitely. I think Tyrone Mings is a linchpin in the team, in that defence as well. As we spoke last time, I pointed out that for me, yes, Tyrone Mings does have a mistake in him. I believe that every player has a mistake in them, but he's do tend to get highlighted a little bit more. Konsa's a good player. Konsa's a 7 or 8 out of 10 every week. I don't think he's going to get to the levels of a Paul McGrath in defence for us, but he will be a very good defender for years to come. And hopefully one day he goes on to represent England or Portugal. He'll be a mainstay as well. I don't think he's on the level of Tyrone Mings just yet. I do really, really rate Mings. One, mainly because of what Dave's pointed out, his leadership qualities. You look at Palace last season, you look at West Ham at home earlier this season when he started on the bench, you look at Brentford as well. You miss that booming presence from him at the back. He'll take control of games, and he's a very confident player, isn't he? Even at times when you think it might be a bit misplaced, his confidence, he is very confident on the ball. For me, it's left back and defensive midfield that we need to sort out to really help him become even better than what he is at the moment. Ezri Konsa, as I say, fantastic. I'm inclined to disagree with what I previously said about him being vice captain potentially. I think you're right. He doesn't have enough about him lead the team just yet vocally. Performance-wise, very good player, but not the same sort of player as Mings, and we definitely missed the leader. That was glaringly obvious on Sunday against Brentford.
Now, you mentioned vice captain there, and in Tyrone Mings' absence on Sunday, current vice captain John McGinn stepped up to take the captain's armband. I'm a well-known fan of John McGinn. I have to say it wasn't the best performance we've seen from him. I mean, there was kind of, I think he had a usual shot from 30 yards that didn't trouble the goalkeeper. And that was pretty much it. I mean, we ran a poll on our Twitter page after the game in terms of, because McGinn didn't play very well and Villa lost, and when McGinn has previously been captain, having to step up, Villa have also lost. So the record hasn't been particularly good. So we ran a poll to see whether it's as simple as Villa losing when John McGinn's captain because John McGinn isn't a very good captain and we should have somebody else as vice captain, or whether it's, just one of those weird quirks of face, like for example, I remember Gareth Bale wasn't on the winning team for like 23 odd games in the start of his Premier League career. And things have gone all right for him since then in terms of that. We ran the poll. I think the majority, I think it's 83% or something, Will, you correct me, saying that McGinn is still the right man to be that vice captain. But a few question marks for you, I think it was fair to say, in terms of McGinn and maybe his performance in that central midfield, and also perhaps his performance as captain.
I disagree with 83% of the fans that voted, to be honest with you. Sorry, Villa fans, we've all got an opinion, we've all got an arsehole, At the end of the day, John McGinn for me, then we were discussing this again off air, maybe one day we should just film that beforehand. Douglas Luiz, just to move ever so slightly, has had a bit of criticism, and more so after the Brentford game. And one thing that was highlighted was that it was by Stan Collymore, not exactly a Villa legend, but someone who follows the Villa. He pointed out that McGinn was having to do an awful lot of covering for Douglas Luiz. And I think he did. And I think that takes away from his game. Unless he's got a defensive midfielder like Marvellous Nakamba, and who'd have thought we'd have been saying this previously, but if he's got someone like Marvellous Nakamba who's just there to sit, to break up play, and then very much to give the ball to the people who can go and do the business, John McGinn has to do too much defensive work. And there's times as well where he's covering a little bit too much for Kashi. You feel he was against Man City. I think you even said he was playing as a second right back, didn't you, Baz?
Yeah, it's a very different. It was interesting to see whether mentioning in terms of McGinn doing a lot more covering. Yes, Sunday against Brentford and also against Man City, whether that was part of the tactical plan or whether that was McGinn adopting that all-action role in terms of wanting to be everywhere and cover every blade of grass, how much that fitted into what Gerrard had told him or not. And I'd say in terms of just briefly touching upon Douglas Luiz, you mentioned there's been some criticism. Divides opinion, I think, is fair to say in terms of the Villa fan base. Some are very pro Luiz, some are very anti. I'd say in terms of if you're expecting Luiz to be the defensive midfielder doing a similar role to Nakamba, then your expectations are wrong, in my opinion, because I don't think that's what Luiz is in the team to do. Unless Gerrard is going to correct me and say Luiz was meant to play in defensive mid and he just went for a walkabout, then fair enough, I will be stand corrected. But I don't see that's why you have Luiz in the team. It demonstrates why you need somebody like Nakamba in the team. Yeah, and you can simplify football to its very simple basics. But my view is you give Luiz the ball because he's one of the best passers of the ball we've got in centre midfield. How do you get him the ball? You don't want to rely on Luiz to go and tackle anyone because he's reckless, shall we say, in terms of getting the ball back, especially sometimes in his own penalty box. So how do you do that? You get Nakamba, who's probably, in terms of creativity in passing forward, he's not near the top in terms of Villa's creativity in that midfield. In terms of getting the ball back and passing it 5 yards, That's the perfect role for him. So, I mean, you touched upon in terms of what we need in the transfer window ahead of centre-back, defensive midfield, you mentioned being one of the places. I completely agree with that. We do need somebody to fill the role when Nakamba's not playing, which he isn't going to be playing for a while. Though, in terms of the vote on McGinn, could say I'm biased, but I agree with the 83%. I mean, I don't think you can write McGinn off as a captain based on Sunday. There is a sample size, as you pointed out to, in terms of a couple of games, 3 or 4 games where he's been captain and we've lost. But I think in terms of, there's 2 aspects I would highlight in terms of, did we lose the game because of the way McGinn captained the team? I don't think so, really. And in terms of picking a captain, it goes from the schoolyard upwards. What do you want, or what are the characteristics at the top of the list you look for when picking your captain? We've mentioned already in terms of Tyrone Mings, it's leadership, which in its simplest term, you can boil down to he shouts a lot and lets everybody knows he's there and organises and gets in effect, the manager's voice, the manager's, the tactics across to the players and in sometimes no uncertain terms. So that's one way to go for in a captain. And we mentioned in terms of, in the absence of Mings, especially in that back line, that was noticeable that there wasn't quite that vocal organisation. And we haven't really got anybody else currently who I'd say you could be like Tyrone Mings in that regard. So you look the other way and you say, who, in terms of war parlance, I suppose, maybe a bit uncouth example, but who would you follow over the top? Which I suppose is another way of saying who's one of your best players. And me being my McGinn bandwagon driver and the organiser of the fan club, in terms of outfield players, I'd say McGinn is our best player. So in terms of, he didn't play well on Sunday. I think that's fair to say. But usually for Villa, in terms of when Villa play well, McGinn plays well. And I think we've had that in recent games under Steven Gerrard, that he's, Sunday aside, has lifted his level. And I think that's another way for a captain to inspire his teammates, going, oh, man, he's playing, really well, lifting us up. So I want to step up my level as well. So in a combination of thinking it's slightly unfair on McGinn and probably in the absence of any alternative candidates who I'd say could do a better job, I would keep McGinn as vice captain myself, which nicely has us to a 1-1 vote. So lucky we have got a third party on here to see if we can tease a casting vote from Dave in terms of the McGinn question, as in, would you keep him as vice captain, or do you think it's a bit much to read into it after one windy day at Brentford?
Well, I mean, going on your poll, what I would say is, I think there's another reason. Why do we lose when McGinn is captain? If McGinn is captain, it probably means that Tyrone Mings isn't playing. And so there's the problem. So this is going back to my Tyrone Mings loving, which seems to be a theme of this episode. So I think when Tyrone Mings isn't there, we're just not we don't have the same kind of just leadership, as I keep on saying that word again. There is the question of who else. And I think, is McGinn the Scotland captain? Or have I dreamt that? I know he's been Scotland Player of the Year.
Andy Robertson.
Andy Robertson, okay. Sorry, yeah, okay. No, but I suppose if you're looking through who's been there for years, who do the fans like? I can't really think of anyone else. I mean, I suppose the one other person given it to would be Martinez. And maybe just if we're lacking Tyrone Mings in defence, the mouthpiece goes to Emmy. So I'd maybe put John McGinn as vice captain, if that makes sense. And I'd give the captain's armband to Emmy Martinez when Tyrone isn't there.
I see some nodding for those listening on the podcast rather than YouTube. There's some nodding coming from Will over there. I'm guessing you would agree you'd put Martinez captain in the absence of Mings?
No, Danny Ings. No, definitely Emmy Martinez. Definitely. I think Emmy Martinez, for the leadership qualities, I can understand John McGinn. John McGinn has been fantastic this season. and has particularly raised his game under Steven Gerrard. I think he had too much to do on Sunday with Louise going walkabouts. But no, I'd always plump for Martinez over him. And the reason for it mainly being is that Martinez is our best player. He's a world-class goalkeeper. He's the 6th best goalkeeper in the world. He's won numerous trophies, more trophies than the rest of the team put together, probably, which hopefully will change in the next couple of seasons. If you think back to last year, we had our best player as captain, and that worked out quite well for us. You know, it did when we came from the Championship. It did in that first season back in the Premier League because he scored the goal that kept us up and was brilliant. Why not give it to our best player again? And I really do feel that that's Emi Martinez. It's potentially a sorry state of affairs that our best player is our goalkeeper, but in the absence of Tyrone Mings, who is that natural leader and has that love and appreciation for the club, and most of the fans love and appreciate him, Dave definitely does.
When I saw him go up for that corner at the end, I was like, oh my God, Ezri Martinez is going to score and he's going to go and do another dance. And then I'll get on the show and I'll have another little dance to do. And sadly, that didn't happen. Actually, we nearly conceded because of it.
But no, I think Martinez is the natural selection for second choice. It allows everybody else then on the pitch out in front of him to go and do what they need to do. I wouldn't put Martinez as captain over Mings, but he'd definitely be my second choice.
Well, I'll go and hide out with the 83%. But in terms of a tenuous link, you mentioned there in terms of which team has a goalkeeper as their best player. That nicely links me on to Man United. In terms of David De Gea, I'd say
Tom Heaton. Oh, sorry, yeah.
Well, he's their second best player. And it maybe in the 10 minutes he was in the departure lounge back at Man United before going to Italy. But next up, well, double header in terms of Man United in the Cup and the League. Focus on the League next week in what will probably be a first and maybe a last next week, a United review and a United preview. So, you have to be on the ball for that one. But looking forward to the Cup game Monday night on the telly. I think, is it ITV, BBC?
On the Beeb. I can actually watch it. Yeah.
Other channels available for our overseas viewers in our far-flung corners of the world. But last game of the weekend. So again, you got, if you're struggling for things to do on the weekend, go and listen to or watch the transfer special. Another shameless plug if you haven't watched or listened to that before. But we've had a discussion about the game kind of when the draw was made a few weeks ago in terms of what approach Gerrard may take and what approach Man United may take in terms of selection ahead of that game. It wasn't just Villa losing in the latest round of Premier League games. Man United put up a pretty sorry performance at home to Wolves, losing 1-0. Villa evidently come on a 2-match losing streak. Do recent results and performances to an extent change what you think the approach should be for the FA Cup game, Dave, or stick with whatever you think our original plan should have been for how we line up?
Well, I mean, when Gerrard came in, the big plus I saw was that the defence tightened up now. Was that the formation, the loss of Nakamba, has that affected it? But look, we got to get back to not leaking goals. I mean, we shouldn't have conceded 2 against Brentford, but we did. I mean, Chelsea, okay, they had Lukaku, he ripped us open, but we're conceding too many goals now. So I would really go into that game with a focus on keeping the structure. I don't think they're anything special. I mean, the Ralph Rangnick, revolution, it's well and truly falling apart, isn't it? Lost 2 and 3 games. I mean, they're nothing special. Cristiano up front, it doesn't seem to be gelling, him and Bruno. It didn't work in Portugal. It's not working at United. I think if we, I know one part of me thinks we should have a go at them, but I think keep structure and keep them quiet. And because it's Old Trafford, and if it's 60 minutes gone, it's 0-0, I think they're more likely to get frustrated than us. So I'd really, really focus on the defence and trying to keep a clean sheet, or for trying to keep them at bay for as long as possible, and then try and build on that. In terms of the team we put out, I honestly don't know. Do we try and put Ings and Watkins up front, or both in the squad together? Because we haven't, in the first 11 together, it hasn't really worked yet. Are we better off playing with one for 60 minutes or 70 minutes and bringing the other on fresh, for that kind of final charge? That's a big call for Gerrard. I'd be inclined to think, even though I want to see Ings and Watkins together, that he should just pick one, because that's what seems to have worked best. But let's focus on keeping it tight and try to keep a clean sheet for as long as possible. I know it's a cup tie, and does it go straight to penalties? I know there's no replays in the third round. I'm not sure if we have extra time or not, but let's just try and keep it tight. And I think that'll frustrate them. And I think that's the best form of attack, is defence in the next game. Tighten up, and let's hopefully frustrate them.
I think in the Brentford preview, Will, I think you described Brentford as nothing special. Would you have a similar description for Man United, or should we be fearing them a bit more?
I think the fact that we've lost a couple of games on the trot and Man United have lost a couple of games on the trot works in their favour, doesn't it? You know what we're like for coming against teams who aren't doing very well. Man United are a very good team. They've got a lot of good players within their squad. They haven't gelled just yet. Cue them whooping us 5-0 now at Old Trafford. I do feel that, as Dave's pointed out with the Ronaldo-Bruno situation, I don't think he'll play Ronaldo against us. Now, they could be famous last words, but is he going to risk Ronaldo in the FA Cup when there's more at stake in the league? I think you try and save him until then. It'll be an interesting game, especially on the back of our recent results. We were very good defensively when Gerrard first came in. There's been those couple of mishaps in the last couple of games. I mean, the fact that Brentford had 3 shots and scored 2 of them, yeah, not great. I think we see a similar game plan to the Liverpool game plan, where we try and go defensive for as much of the game as possible, as Dave mentioned, to dampen the theatre of dreams, and then we look to attack them. And one of the big questions is, who will play in that front three? Buendia's got to play for me. Danny Ings, on the back of getting the goal, should be starting as well. And then it's a case of, you probably got one of 3 that it could be. Ollie Watkins would be your natural choice. That's who you're going to put into the team, because he's one of your better players. But along with him, I think you've got Carney Chukwuemeka, who could come in and play between those lines and hopefully pull a couple of the Man United defenders out of position. I don't think that's too hard to do when you're up against Harry Maguire, to be honest with you. And then you've also got Viligence Bidace. Does he give a youngster like Bidace a chance to shine in the FA Cup? You know, it's only one change. He's a quick player. He'll run at Luke Shaw if Luke Shaw's at left back. He could be running at Harry Maguire and causing him no end of problems. It's a quandary. Fortunately, not one that I have to deal with.
No, but we can shamelessly speculate about it, which is even better. I mean, I'd say in terms of the question is, do you play your strongest team? And there's questions in respect of, what does Gerrard think our strongest team is? And does that have room for both Watkins and Ings? Or alternatively, do you play a few young players? You know, as you mentioned, Village and Bidace, Chukwuemeka. We mentioned Bogard in the Brentford preview as somebody you might possibly play in the cup tie. Do you use it as an opportunity to give our younger players some experience, or do you go strongest, most experienced 11? I think we play the strongest team. I'll put it. I think we should. Is my view. I mean, I think there's a temptation to potentially play. You know, I can see the merits of playing the younger players to get the experience, but Man United, as we've touched upon, not in the greatest run of form. They're not scoring very many goals. particularly. I mean, I think they scored 3 against Burnley, and that's extravagant in terms of Man United's goal scoring record under Ratchnick so far. Mentioned our game plan is potentially to keep it tight. I think that feeds in quite well in terms of trying to keep it tight against a team who aren't scoring very many goals. I mean, they've got good players, obviously. I mean, I don't think we can deny otherwise, but they're not flowing yet. And, the previous manager didn't get sacked for no reason. So it's, I mean, losing to teams like Villa at home didn't help in terms of Solskjaer's reign. But I think Dave mentions that there's no replay. So I think that puts more onus to go for it in terms of the strongest lineup. And I think the younger players have a role to play in terms of coming on in the second half, potentially extra time. Viewers, listeners will write in to correct this error if it is an error. I think it is extra time and penalties is my understanding. I don't think it goes straight to penalties, but subscribe and comment that I'm wrong if I am. So shameless plug there. So I'd go full strength, whatever Gerrard thinks full strength. I think in terms of especially the game against Brentford, I think we need how we played in that game. I think we need a reaction. And the fact that we're playing United in the league again 5 days later means that even if it would be a different team, I think you can build momentum in terms of if you get a good performance and possibly a good result at Old Trafford in the cup game. I think that's only going to translate over to the league game, even if there are potentially a few changes. I mean, the crowd will be, they don't need much excuse at home to Man United to be up for it, but I'm sure there'll be a few words exchanged if Villa have gone to Old Trafford and won in the FA Cup, especially if we've got a nice favourable draw in the 4th round and, dreams of Wembley prematurely filling the airwaves as they are now, because I'm speculating about the 4th round draw. So, Dave, do you need to drag me out of my rare burst of positivity and my gung-ho spirit of going for it? Do we go full strength or do we lay up, I suppose, in terms of golf parlance and get some minutes for younger players and also players who are potentially trying to get back to match fitness?
Well, the younger players are going to have to come off the bench, I think, because now with Traore and Trezeguet gone, who's coming off the bench? So I think we're going to see Carney Chukwuemeka at some stage. I mean, Ramsey, I'd definitely start him. I know he's kind of a nailed-on starter now, but I mean, I suppose, do we bring in any other youngsters like Philogene Badace and yeah? I mean, I'm not sure. I think we should play the strongest possible team in the FA Cup game. I personally would much prefer to see us win the FA Cup game than the league game. The league, we're not going to go down. We're not going to get Europe. What it is, we're going to be in that mid-table. I'm totally okay with that. We could get a cup run. I'd love a good cup run. It's been too long. It has been 1957 when we wore this jersey. Not this exact jersey. This is a cheap replica. But, it's been too long, since we've had a little bit of a success there. So I think let's put the strongest possible team forward for the FA Cup. But as I say, we probably will see youngsters because I'm not sure we have 3 full team players on the bench, if that makes sense.
I think it also helps in terms of potential transfer targets. The game, big game, high-profile game, televised across Europe and the world. In terms of if we could put on a positive performance at United, I think that would only help in terms of if there's any players on Stevie G's shortlist that may need a bit of persuading, to come to the delights of Birmingham in January. We've got to look to take every advantage that we can. So in terms of the cup game, because it can go to extra time and penalties, it has to be decided on the day. We'll keep it simple in terms of predictions. I've teased the prospect of a 4th round draw. Will, do you think we're going to be in the hat for the 4th round?
Yeah, I do. I'm gonna put us to go through on penalties. I think we do play a strong team. Whether it's our absolute strongest, Well, actually, I think my strongest team for this match might differ from your twos. I just have 11 Danny Ings, but there we go. No, in all fairness, I think that we should have too much. We could have too much for them. I think we'll go full strength, and I think that they'll play a couple of players who aren't regular starters. We may see Robbie Savage's son playing, for example, or a Lindelof or in defence type of a thing, Henderson in goal, or even Tom Heaton. I think we'll have too much for them. I think we'll draw, and then we'll beat them on penalties.
No, a nice positive start from I think you predicted us to win every game this season, Will. So I'm glad to see that the streak continues.
Yeah,
how about you, Dave? You similarly optimistic about Villa's chances?
Listen to the heart, listen to the head. Yeah, go on. I think we can do it. I mean, they're no great shakes. United, and let's put the Brentford game into context. Brentford narrowly lost 1-0 to Man City before playing us. They're no mugs, Brentford, and they have a habit of picking up results this season. And it's a tough place to go because there's an amazing atmosphere in the Brentford Community Stadium. I don't think that amazing atmosphere extends to Old Trafford. Now, granted, every time Ollie lost, he went round and clapped the fans clapped him back, but it's certainly not the place it used to be under Alex Ferguson. I think we can do it. I think it'll be hopefully some cute tactics from Gerrard, frustrating them, and then get a goal after about 77, 78 minutes. And then Man United will suddenly bring Cristiano and co off the bench, and hopefully we have enough to withhold them at that time. So fingers crossed for a 1-0 to Villa. If they come and wallop us 4-0 at Villa Park, I don't mind so much if we can get that win in the FA Cup.
Unsurprisingly, I think a lot is going to turn on team selection, especially for United. I think if Villa play full strength, United play reserves or half reserves, not full strength, I think the odds turn in our favour. I'll be interested to see in terms of, because United was so poor against Wolves, whether that forces Man United to play a full strength team in terms of thinking we need to get the crowd on side, because see, we mentioned Solskjaer, previous manager. Fans never particularly turned on him at Old Trafford in terms of, being booed off the pitch and Solskjaer out and all that. Whereas Ralph Rangnick isn't going to have as much leeway as Solskjaer, especially because his time as manager is scheduled to finish at the end of the season. So I think for United fans, if they're thinking that he's only here for a short time anyway, then if we're not happy, then he's not going to be here long anyway. So we don't need to pull back. So I think a lot of it is going to fall on United's team selection. I think mentioned in terms of the Brentford game, Brentford playing 5 at the back at home. United won't get away with us. Their fans won't let them get away with that, regardless of whether they're playing full strength team or not. So I think selection is going to be incredibly important for this. I'm thinking in terms of, because Will is usually the positive one, and most of the season I'm the negative one. But when I stray into positive territory, like I did against Brentford on Sunday, Villa lost. Maybe I need to do my duty. Maybe I need to predict Villa to lose. So the balance in the universe, the equilibrium is restored, and Villa win. So people listening to this on our podcast providers won't see Will praying for me to predict a Villa loss. So I'm going to, those prayers are going to be answered, Will. I'm doing it for the greater good because, I agree with Dave. I want to see a cup run, in terms of I'd rather have a cup trophy than European. Well, I know if you win the FA Cup, you get European qualification, but you know what I mean? In terms of, I'd rather win the FA Cup than come 7th or 8th in terms of the hierarchy of achievement. So I'm going to answer Will's prayers. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. I think it may go to extra time. I think United will be in the draw for the 4th round. So a win-win scenario, because, in terms of if we lose, my prediction's right. And if we lose, and if we win, then, I'm happy to have my prediction proved wrong. So, and also the majority have said Villa are going to win and the tie and go through anyway. So I think I pretty much got all my bases covered, in terms of that prediction. And speaking of having all bases covered, then I think we've covered all the bases in terms of the Brentford game, the United game, looking forward to that. And places where we also have all the bases covered is our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby, we've talked about numerous polls in the course of this podcast that we've run on there. And no doubt there will be plenty more in terms of the build up to the game, team selection, predictions, etc. Also, we will be providing our comments on all things Villa. Maybe some transfer news will be completed, and we'll keep a tally on the Twitter page as to how many of our predictions made in the transfer window special have turned out to be true. And if you don't know what we're talking about in terms of the transfer window special, go and check out our YouTube page at Talk Trinity, whereby it is there already for your viewing pleasure. Or if you prefer listening to our delightful tones rather than viewing our delightful visages, then check out our podcast directories. We are on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google, some other ones that I'll let Will wrap up near the end of the podcast. Like, subscribe, all the other various things that cool kids do now in terms of channels. We appreciate all the interaction and support. And we also appreciate Dave coming on to the show. Always a pleasure, Dave. Thanks for joining us again today. We will be hearing from you again soon in terms of the transfer window roundup at the end of January, start of February. So already looking forward to having you back, even though you technically haven't even left yet in terms of the podcast. But
cheers. Always good to chat Villa. I hope there isn't too much of a backlash for me suggesting that Mings might be more valuable than Konsa. It's a bit of a debate, but I'm sure that one will rumble.
And in terms of people who are no stranger to a backlash, I'll pass you over to Will Forrest for his final thoughts in terms of today's podcast.
Once again, thank you everybody for listening to us on all of the channels that Baz mentioned, along with Stitcher and Deezer and probably Geezer and Freezer as well. If you're watching us on YouTube, then you are a lucky devil. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, hit that bell so that you get all the notifications. I haven't mentioned it yet. Go and watch the January transfer special, the first leg, with the other hundreds and hundreds, actually thousands of Villa fans who have watched it. It is very much appreciated, Dave. It's great for you to be back on it again. Next time you're going to have to hit us with that Martinez dance, hopefully, especially if he saves a couple of penalties in the shootout against United. I imagine that Ronaldo will be stepping up next time when they get their penalty. We'll put a poll out as well to see what minute Man United will get their penalty in both the FA Cup and the Premier League matches. But until then, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. I'm Villa till I die. Up the Villa.
Up the Villa.